Okay, so apparently if you stop a video, you can't start it back up again. So here we go. So this plug here is your power source right here, and it has that big old square thing there. So you plug it into that. Then you have your pedal, okay? That's the thing that you will press down on to make the machine go. So then here you go. You're going to push it into there. They have that visual to show you that's where the pedal goes. And you lay it flat on the surface. Make sure wherever you lay it, it doesn't slip, okay? So now we're going to go back to bobbin winding. Now I have everything where it needs to be to start winding my bobbin. So you see how it's winding the bobbin. Now this little thing here that you see, that thing, you can see, you pop it out. That's just how it should stay. You pop it in to start winding the bobbin. When it fills up, this will stop it, okay? So I'm gonna wind it so you can see how once it gets full and is ready to use, this thing will pop it out. So, and it doesn't matter how fast you go, it doesn't matter. You want to make sure that this thread stays put. If it doesn't, it will not work properly. See how it's starting to stop, like kind of don't want to go anymore? Then that means it's full. For some reason it didn't pop itself out, but that's okay. All right, so then that bobbin is ready to go. All right, so now here's your bobbin. This is the spool of thread that goes in the bottom of your sewing machine. So this is where it lives. You see that little arrow? That's a reminder. So the way you put your bobbin in is that you see this little tail? It should always be going down. So when I say it's going down, sorry, I don't have a child here to help me. It should look like this. The thread should be pointing in a downward spiral. You cannot, it can't, this is wrong. If it looks like, if you put it in there like this, that is incorrect. You see what a thread is? And it's going in that direction, that is wrong. The right way to put a bobbin in is that your tail is wrapping in that direction, wrapping towards the left, and the tail is towards the bottom. All right, so you see, this is very important. Your machine will not work otherwise. So you lay it in there. Just, that's all you have to do. Just lay it in there very softly. Now there's like a little bit of a hook ridge here. And underneath there, what you don't see is there's a little small tunnel that pulls your thread through. So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your thread, and you see how you can't see it, but it slides underneath there. So then it makes a little pool. So then if you go back on the beginning of this video, you can see where it pulled, because then it made the bobbin move. So then that is all you do. And so now the bobbin is ready to go. It is missing this piece, and either your mother will order it or we'll find it before I mail it to you. But then it's a door, you just kind of slide in place. Okay, now you have your spool still sitting here. Now you're going to remove this, because that thing here is only for bobbins. So here's your thread. You're going to go and see how it's a hideaway. There's a underneath spot here. So you're going to take your thread underneath here, right there. That's very important. Every place that your thread goes is important. Otherwise, it will not sew for you. So it also has like a little diagram to help you remember. So this arrow, the first arrow, goes down, and it literally shows you where to go next. You go down, and it catches right here. You just don't see it. This is a very important tension thing, okay? The dial moves based on the different type of threads you use. This will not be something you really have to worry about right now. So it stays on 4, or you can slide it to 3. So it shows you, as always, a reminder. You go back up. Now you go, where do it goes next? I am going to move the wheel. So here's the wheel here, which you can turn. All right, And as you turn it, watch what happens. It moves this. Every time I move the wheel, see, you can see it. Like every time I move the wheel, you can see it moves. Well, when you're sewing, it also moves automatically without you trying. So I recommend when you are sewing, don't touch it because it goes super fast. But not only that, but it does something else. When you move the wheel, this thing here goes up and down. Okay, you see it goes up and down. The reason why I say that, because when you're sewing, when you're threading your machine, and you take the needle here, you take it down through the loop, the next step is to put it through that hole. That is also a very important thing. Sometimes the best way to get it in there is just to cut your thread a little bit, because sometimes it kind of unravels. So you're going to pull your thread through. All right, I made it kind of long. So you see that? Now, there's a little loop thing here, but you don't see it. But if you pull on it, you can tell it caught. All right, and then there's a little bit of a slit that you can slide it through. And then here, there's another little clip thing, which you really can't see, but you can feel it. And I really can't do it with two hands. So we're gonna prop it. And apparently it's behind here. So I guess apparently the best way to get it, Cameron, is there's a little slide loop that you pull the thread way back there. And I don't know if you can see it, but when you look at it, you can feel it when you have it with you. But there's like a little clip, which you really can't see because it's black. But you pull your thread all the way back there, and then it pulls itself here. All right, the last step, which I'm going to cut my thread to shorten it up. And your last step is to put the thread through the eye of the needle. Okay, so this is very important too. When you put this thread through, it always has to go from the front to the back. There is no other choice. If you don't follow any of these steps, this machine not only will not work, it might make weird noises, or it will eat up your machine, or it'll just make this whole bottom bobbin look like throwaway thread. It's just the weirdest thing that happens. So, and that's it. All right. So then you're not ready to sew all the way. You got one more step. Okay. The bobbin is in place. String is hanging out. The machine has all the thread in its right spot, and the needle is going in. The thread is going into the needle from the front to the back. The last step is this bobbin tail. It should never be hanging here. It needs to be going through this little hole right here. See this little hole here? It needs to be coming up through that. This whole thing here, this whole round part, is called a feed dog. And what it is, it's called a feed dog mainly because it's the thing that when you're sewing, it pushes it helps push your thread as you go. So as you sew, these little teeth are actually grabbing your thread and moving it. You also need to be helping that move and keeping it in place, but this is the main thing that's doing it. So you're going to take your wheel, you're going to pull towards you, you're going to turn the wheel towards you, and as you do so, you're going to turn it like one full clockwise, and you see how it goes down, but then there's still thread in there. All right, so you're going to, this is the thread that is a part of, see how this thread is still, this is that bobbin thread here, right? But this thread is the thread that's a part of your needle. So once you turn it fully, one turn, you lift it up, and as you lift it up, it should pull the bobbin. Well, apparently I didn't turn it a full turn. So I'm gonna turn it one more time, and then now, you see how now it made a loop. You see that little tiny loop? But it also should, when you make the loop, now it has a loop, and then you will pull the loop through. Now, voila. Your bobbin thread is coming through the feed dog hole. Your top thread is always really good that it doesn't sit above your foot. It just sit below. If you find yourself going, my machine was sewing and it's not sewing anymore. Everything I just showed you, check. This happens regularly. It's not something you did. It's just one of the things that happen as a seamstress. You go, everything was working just fine and now it's not. Okay. Now, it's ready to sew. All right. The next thing is, let's talk about all these little things here. All right. So remember I was telling you as you move this feed dog, it's what moves it. You can see how, it's starting to like chunk. It's moving. So it's going inside, coming up and going back out, and it's pulling the fabric that way. All right. So that's all that does. Now we're going to start at A. So A, but of course means this. Okay? But what that means is, see how it has like a little loop? So this tells you, if you turn it on A, it means it makes really tiny stitches. If you turn it to B, it means it'll make your stitches a lot wider. If you turn it to C, it makes it a little bit more wider, and so on and so forth. If you're sewing, I would recommend you keep it at C, because that's in the middle of the two. There's a reason for all the other ones, but it's not necessary. So if you want to stitch B or C, okay? And if you have a heavier fabric, I would go with E. All right, so then here are zigzag stitches, which is pretty much what it says. It goes zig, 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 right? And the same thing, you turn the wheel where you want it to go. Now, what is this fancy thing? Well, when you're sewing, you sew this direction. Well, when you start a stitch, say you're sewing a seam, 2 pieces of fabric together, you want to sew like 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 stitches. So you'll sew 1, 2, 3 stitches. So that means 4 full turns of the wheel, or simply 4 stitches. So you'll sew 4 stitches forward, but you have to lock those stitches in. If not, when you are sewing, they will unravel and they will defeat the whole point of sewing. Then so what you have to do, you stitch 3 to 4 stitches forward. Then you're still sewing, by the way. While you're sewing, you push this lever down and then you sew 3 or 4 stitches forward. What happens is your fabric will be going in this direction. When you hit that lever, your fabric will go back this way. And all it's doing is sewing on top of the stitch you just did to lock that stitch in so it doesn't ravel. When you're at the end of that seam, say you're at the end of the fabric you're sewing, you need to do the same thing. So say you're the last 3 or 4 stitches at the end of your seam, you do it one more time to lock your stitch in. Why? So it won't unravel. Okay, so that is about it. I am going to see. I recommend you sew with fabric first. With paper first. But we're going to sew a little bit with a little fabric. But like I said, didn't really come prepared for said video. So I got a little piece of white fabric. And here we go. Here we have, okay, so we have our fabric underneath here, right? But you notice it doesn't want to stay. Well, there's a way to keep it flat. Before you start sewing, there's a lever, which, by the way, here it is. There's that lever right here, okay? The reason why I'm showing it to you from the back, because you can't see it from the front, but you can feel it. So say I want to sew. I'm ready to sew. I got my fabric underneath here. I'm right here at my seam. I'm ready to go. Like I said, you can't see it, but you see where it pushes your foot down, okay? That is the last step. And it keeps your fabric in place, and it helps you steady stitching. So then I'm ready to sew. Now remember I said a few stitches forward. First I want you to see what it looks like. Okay, so here's your stitch. That's what it should look like. Here's what it looks like in the back. Here's another little trick. If your stitches, your thread stitches on the top looks weird, that means something is not right about your bobbin. That means your bobbin isn't sitting in its casing right, or it wasn't wound correctly. And if so, you got to start over. If you find that something weird is happening with your stitch, in other words, if it looks like anything other than what it looks like right now, that means something up top happened. So pretty much the bottom thread is something to do with the top thread has something to do with the bobbin. All right, so we're going to stitch a little bit more. So you notice I'm going to stitch. Now I'm doing this with no hands. I don't want you to do it with no hands, but that's just me. Okay, so we're going to stitch it. It's stitching, and then I'm going to, so it's actually going backwards. So we're going to stitch a little bit farther ahead, but I want you to see what happens. I'm hitting the lever, and it starts to move it. You see how it reverses it backwards. All right. Now, if you also notice, okay, so once, let's go back. I'm finished stitching, right? Well, you notice I'm having it's hard. I can't pull it out. Well, you don't want to yank it out, right? What you want to do is, what happens is your needle is not in a certain position. That means your needle, your whole tension lever is not in a certain position. So you're ready to pull it out. Well, what you do is, if it's tugging, all you do is move your wheel a little bit forward, and then you can pull it out. Another trick of how do you know you can pull it out is sometimes it's the place where this is. But if you feel like you're having a hard time tugging it out, don't rip it out. It should be easy as, see how easy it is for me to pull? It should be that easy a flow. It should be as easy as pulling my thread out of the bobbin. If it's not easy, all you do is move your wheel a little bit forward. And it doesn't take a lot, just enough. So one hand should be on the wheel turning it forward, and your other hand should be on the fabric pulling it out. And as soon as you feel it loosen a little bit, that's when you pull out, okay? And then you want to cut your threads. Another rule, you do not want to cut your thread short. Every time you sew, you want a little bit, what we call a tail. The reason why you want a little bit of a tail, if say you cut your thread too close, right? Sometimes, because this thing moves, right? It goes up and down. Well, it also stretches and shortens your thread because it's in the process of sewing. So sometimes you can start sewing and then the thread disappears out of your needle because it pulls it out and it's up there somewhere, and now you're sewing, and then this bobbin starts to make weird things. Also, if it's not, you cut it too short, the bobbin could be cut short. And then now you got to start all over again. But you don't notice it while you're starting to sew again. And all of a sudden it makes a weird noise, or just like the whole bobbin fucks up, or you ain't got no thread in your needle. And then now you got to start all the way over again. Okay? So that part is ready to go. I'm going to give you a few bobbins, okay, to start off with. I personally think you should have multiple bobbins because you don't want to have to, say you're working on a project, got multiple colors. You don't want to have to keep winding a bobbin. You want to have a bobbin for a few colors, so then that way you're not frustrated having to start all over again. All you have to do is change your bobbin, change your spool of thread. All right, smooches, I love you.